12 days, he and the country's most inept home renovators battled it out in this very building, trying to turn some derelict apartments into livable, rentable units. When it was all said and done, each handyman failed miserably. In just under an hour, our Handyman Rehabilitation Center will be knocked to the ground. In this post-mortem episode of Canada's Worst Handyman, we'll enjoy the demolition of the rehab center, and we'll also take a look at the constructive, personal journey each nominee took inside the walls of this building.
The candidates for Canada's Worst Handyman were nominated by you after we conducted a nationwide campaign designed to flush out the most inept builders in the country. When we finished sifting through the rubble, it was obvious. These 5 people are Canada's worst handymen. Merle from Sucker Creek, Alberta, has an addiction to duct tape that's stronger than the product itself. His long-suffering wife, Shelley, insisted he go into rehab so he can learn how to slow down.
Shelley thinks my handiwork is too fast and too sloppy.
Barry from Quadra Island, BC, is a living, breathing safety hazard.
I hurt myself sometimes.
He was nominated as Canada's worst handyman by his worried neighbor, Scott.
He should never pick up a tool, ever.
Jeannie from Victoria, BC, is avidly working away on her newly acquired home, even though she has no handyman experience. She was hauled out of the basement by her friend Lawrence.
She's a bit of a klutz.
I'm a what?
She needs help.
I'm bleeding. I don't know how I got to bleed.
Daryl's next. He grew up around men who were so good at fixing things, he never had to lift a finger.
That looks like...
Now as an adult, not being handy has become an embarrassment. Especially to his wife, Sarah.
I'm moving.
And Keith, Canada's worst handyman, was nominated for the title by his friend, David.
I don't know what tools are. Like, if somebody gave me a tool, I don't know what these things do.
These 5 enthusiastic builders arrived here from extremely different backgrounds, but their similarities are uncanny. For starters, none of them thought they could possibly be Canada's worst handyman.
I am not Canada's worst handyman because I know what I'm doing.
When these sawdust makers arrived at the Handyman Rehabilitation Center, they didn't know exactly what they were getting into.
I have actually quite a bit of anxiety about what's actually behind that door.
Then, Merle bashed his way through our symbolic barrier, and the mystery ended. Exploring their new apartments, each candidate came face to face with the ugly truth.
Oh my God, Daryl, you're gonna have so much trouble.
Holy
Oh my God.
Our renovators were told that during their stay in rehab, their goal was to make these suites rentable.
Ah, it was yellow!
What they didn't know is that we chose this complex because it's doomed. It's slated for demolition.
The apartment seemed big and empty and scary.
Here we are for 2 weeks in this rat-infested hellhole.
I thought, oh my God, we're going to be here all year. And I got myself into a whole lot of trouble.
Nice place.
The nominees were informed they would spend 12 days here, attending group classes.
If you try to cheat on this one, you will be in serious trouble.
Receiving private lessons.
You are going to become better at screwing. I believe you know the drill.
And revitalizing their derelict apartments through a series of 25 basic do-it-yourself challenges. These challenges were explained and organized by our 2 home renovation professionals. When Greg House, our head builder, and Robin Lockhart, our head designer, came to rehab, they were surprised to find the bad handyman argumentative.
I have no animosity at all. He's the expert, and I'm asking him questions.
My job here as the building expert is to critique the building.
Right.
It's not all the gushy feelings between you. It's the building.
Like this one here.
Why are you working on them now when you still have this
Like,
on?
it doesn't matter if I take this off now or in 100 years.
Why are you fighting the guy?
When our two pros weren't teaching, they were watching the students from a high-tech surveillance center. At series end, Robin, Greg, and I had the serious task of deciding which one of these 5 people is Canada's worst handyman. So now, let's take a trip down memory lane and see what lessons were learned here at the Handyman Rehabilitation Center.
Right.
We'll start with Keith.
Oh.
When we met Canada's worst handyman, he had such bad renovation information, it would have been better if he knew nothing.
I use toothpaste here because somebody once told me that if you make a mistake, you just fill it in with toothpaste. I just use the wrong toothpaste, that's all.
Even so, during his first days at rehab, Keith refused to accept the fact our experts know more than he does.
That has not been attached with screws. That's so totally lame, right? It's just going to fall out.
This is spectacular work.
You know, when something is built without integrity, boom, that's gone.
At the end of show 1, Keith and Robin's relationship also got off to a rocky start when she insulted his mural.
I think if I walked in and saw this, I would probably curl up in the fetal position and have myself a little cry.
Oh. They're like, oh, it's the worst thing I've ever seen. And I did want to say, Robin, it's the worst thing you've ever seen. Like, have you ever seen, like, a car crash? Or have you ever seen anybody die, like, in an earthquake? Like, it's not the worst thing you've ever seen. It's a bit of an exaggeration.
I just don't think he gets it. And that mural.
In show 2, Keith's disdain for Robin grew.
My backsplash in my kitchen is lovely. It's more like something that you would like. It's just like this.
So it's clean and it's a job well done and it makes sense and it's tidy?
But boring.
From that moment on, Keith focused more on insulting our head designer than on doing good handiwork.
I don't like her. I don't like her one bit. This is how Robin gets around. This is her vehicle. And she's superficial. I don't think she probably has any skill, obviously. And her jeans were too tight. You know, she's got tiny hips, so she can conceive, but she can't carry. What's her resume like?
Now, what's your problem with Robin? You're being all like,
Cheap mascara, one head, 2 haircuts. But, she's also has, you know what I mean? Like, but also she has these issues about how things have to be like this, like da 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 da, like A, B, C.
She wants you to do things right, yeah.
But it's not, this isn't right.
To get anything done right, a good handyman needs to have the proper mindset. That's why we hired the services of psychologist Dr. Julie Hill, a specialist in personal growth therapy. When Keith met the good doctor, he identified his biggest problem immediately.
I'm going to try and stay as focused as possible, because sometimes I lose focus, like, incredibly easily.
Razzle dazzle.
No, but I was looking at Barry's crack in his ass. I was in a band called Hacksaw years ago. But I'm going to try to stay as focused as possible and not let, little things kind of throw me off.
He looks at you like when you talk to a dog and they sort of angle their head a little bit and you think it understands what you're saying and it's paying attention, but it's just no.
During our third show, Keith stopped being a know-it-all and admitted he needs help.
I need a lesson in power tools.
We helped everyone learn how to use their high-power cordless drill.
I saw a little bit of what you guys were doing today to these drills. I was weeping.
Get in there, you mother...
Keith was always screwing on a high-power setting, which caused countless stripped heads and multiple bent bits. Occasionally, he would have a satisfying screw, but it was rare.
Oh my God, did you hear that? It was perfect.
That's it.
It went right in, like there was no... did you hear that? There's no hamburger sound.
Hammering was something we could never teach Keith.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
I can't get the image out of my head of him hitting a nail like 48 times to get it in. 4 minutes of bending and straightening and hitting and tapping and bending and straightening it.
In our fourth show, Keith began as his usual ball of boundless energy. But somewhere along the line, his focus blurred.
Oh my god. Okay, it's over. It's done. Oh my god. I can't believe this.
And he started lying down on the job.
That'll help stick it to the floor.
Then, as leader of the Yard Work Challenge, Keith stood by and watched as the team built this fence based on his instructions.
Keith has yet to pick up a tool, swing a hammer.
He's a visionary.
My intention was never to actually, pull, work.
Question is, why bother putting up pickets just kind of randomly? Why not put them up from left to right or from right to left in an even-spaced manner? You didn't measure, you have no reason for choosing where any of these pickets go.
There is there's that quantum physics idea, quantum physics, where you can randomly put things up and then they will establish their own order.
When was this going to establish its own order? 2036?
No, but it's like quantum physics.
In show 5, Keith shocked us all by perfectly completing the most difficult task we threw at him, installing a ceiling fan. We thought he was learning to focus.
Is it off? How do I know? It's not rocket science, any of this this handyman stuff.
But in the final 10-hour exam of our last episode,
Canada's Worst Handyman will be totally judged on this final exam.
Keith's lack of focus defined his day. He wasted most of the morning cutting 3 boards. Then he had lunch. Then he had a cigarette. Then he did basically nothing until the sun went down. And then he had a cigarette. When he realized he'd better kick it into high gear,
There's half an hour left, man. Get in there.
Okay,
What are you doing?
I'm going to do the wallpaper
Why are you standing
next.
here talking to me?
Keith couldn't get the job done. With time running out, Keith panicked and sealed his fate. That's why Keith was named Canada's Worst Handyman. When we come back, the rehab center will be destroyed forever. But first, we'll see if Merle was rehabilitated from his duct tape addiction.
Up next on this special episode of Canada's Worst Handyman, we'll look back at our favorite quick fix aficionado, Merle. Oh, Merle. He might be the only handyman on Earth to have ever been rushed to hospital because of a gash he sustained while upholstering a bench with duct tape.
I drew blood.
Before Merle arrived at rehab, we knew his duct taping was a problem. On the day we first met him at home in northern Alberta, Merle showed off his handyman skills by patching some holes in his wall. Then we asked him to build a toolbox.
Okay.
Instead of using the screws and wood glue we provided, Merle used tiny nails and duct tape. Bad idea.
I like duct tape because it's strong and you can use it anywhere and it's handy.
After crashing through the front door of the rehab center, Merle's first task was patching a hole in his ceiling. Right away, duct tape was his solution.
You ever plastered over duct tape before?
Not this big.
In show 2, Merle's measuring proved to be as bad as his duct taping.
To hell with it here.
To cut his vinyl floor, Merle measured with his feet. And got it wrong.
What am I witnessing? Doing a little patch-up job. I kind of cut it wrong. Kinda.
Again, we weren't surprised. Bad measuring is something else we learned about Merle at his home in Sucker Creek.
I'm not much of a measuring type of guy. Takes too long. It's 32 on top and it's 28 or 27 inches in the bottom. So when my door comes in, didn't use a measuring tape.
Our goal for Merle in rehab was teaching him to use a measuring tape and getting him to use duct tape responsibly. In show 3, though, Merle's duct tape use spiked to dangerous levels. He stuck it needlessly on his laminate flooring underlay, his prefab furniture, and his own cut finger.
Time to pull out the duct tape.
While making his chair in that episode, Merle did cross one major positive milestone. Instead of measuring with a random body part like we'd seen him do so many times before here in rehab,
No, we're measuring tape. Over here.
Merle finally used a measuring tape. That was the first time Merle ever used a measuring tape in his life. Really? Merle almost made another kind of breakthrough in that episode. While assembling his prefab bed, Merle somehow managed to get trapped in no man's land. When Shelley calls him on it, notice how Merle pretends to be casually rearranging the mattress slats.
Get out of the bed.
Kind of stuck.
Oh my God.
In our fourth show, it was time to get tough. So, we removed every stain of duct tape from Merle's room during his kitchen sink plumbing challenge, and he grumbled the whole way through the project.
I'm sure tempted to get my duct tape.
Too bad Merle wasn't tempted to measure. In the end, he finished with a leak and a plan to wrap the project up sometime in the future.
Nothing with a little bit of duct tape won't fix, but I can't say I'm gonna trade my duct tape for the tape measure, because I gotta live with duct tape on my job. My real profession is, being on the highway as a trucker. I need duct tape all the time, so there's no way I could give that guy up.
During his time here in rehab, Merle was consistently the first person finished.
See you at the next challenge.
It became so common, we began having coffee dates out back while everyone else worked.
Woohoo!
First done as usual, Merle.
Had some good help this round.
Cheers, man.
There we go.
Merle was so quick, if someone finished a job before him, they celebrated.
He's going like gangbusters. No more pissing around, wasting time.
But to finish quickly, Merle did things incorrectly. He used a wad of tape to dapple his mural, he wedged his bathroom tiles in place, and he made more patches in 12 days than one man should make in a lifetime.
He's like something that you wind up or you plug in and he's go, 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 go.
Another reason Merle's so quick is that he cleans up by hiding things. The sticky, sweet-smelling tiles Merle left lying around after the floor challenge turned into living, breathing cockroach traps. Who knew? Merle's wife, Shelley, has been by his side since they were teenagers. Since then, she's seen a lot of undone projects pile up.
This is our collection of doors because Merle installs these doors and they usually fall out.
So, we showed Merle how to install a door with great success.
Slam it, slam it. I'm liking this.
I know, I want to go to school.
It's got a good sound. I'm liking this. Slam it in Jeannie's face.
Wow.
I think Merle will go home and hang all those doors in his house. Maybe Shelley will get herself a new sink in the bathroom.
Shelley's starting to find out, I could actually do something.
When you get home, you're gonna do the toilet.
Now it's starting to get to be a pain in the ass, because he's giving me heck every day.
You're gonna do the sink.
To say, why can't you do this at home? Why can't you fix this at home? I want you to do this when we get home.
You're gonna put tile in the bathroom.
I want you to do that when we get home.
Put a floor in Cassie's room.
I don't know if it was a wise choice to come here.
In our fifth episode, Merle came in early to dismantle his duct tape ceiling patch and do the job correctly.
What are you doing, Merle?
I got a good lecture last night.
He swore he was giving up duct tape cold turkey.
So from now on, I just try to stay away from that duct tape.
So how much duct tape is going up there now?
None, I hope.
Woohoo! This is what we call a breakthrough.
But Shelley didn't buy it for a second.
I think by the end of the day, he'll be using duct tape again.
Because Merle made a concerted effort to start measuring, we thought he'd also try hard to kick the duct tape habit. Our psychologist suggested we test Merle. So, when Robin introduced the upholstery challenge, she said the handyman could use fabric or duct tape for the job. Guess what Merle chose?
Oh my God. They gave you duct tape?
This will be faster. What does he do? Give me duct tape and says use it. It's just like buying an alcoholic beer.
Hey, you're supposed to be rehabilitated here.
Knowing this idea would probably not go over so well in final inspection, Merle was determined to do as neat and tidy a job as possible. So he cut the duct tape with a razor-sharp utility knife. In the process, he also cut himself.
Ouch!
Did you cut yourself?
Badly.
I drew blood.
Not surprisingly, when the deep slice happened, Merle once again thought duct tape would save him.
No, Merle, duct tape would not be better. No, no.
As Merle went for stitches, gossip flew, and some wondered if he'd be back in time for the final exam.
He severed a finger, and there was blood everywhere, and they had to take him away, and he ended up in hospital.
Merle came back like a man on a mission. In the final 10-hour exam, he didn't touch duct tape once.
This is something you should get on top of, Merle. You want to learn this one. This stuff will accept plaster and then be able to be sanded. Not like duct tape. Okay?
And he measured wood, gyprock, mortar, patches, and porcelain, ultimately accomplishing more challenges than all the other handymen combined.
We know you're not Canada's worst handyman.
Congratulations, Merle. Your time in handyman rehab has been a success. After the break, we'll see if Barry learned his safety lesson. Then, we're going to demolish the rehab center.
Safety was a constant concern here on Canada's Worst Handyman, especially with this substitute teacher on site. Barry Davis is a hazard to more than just himself. He's capable of hurting the people around him, so, a word to the wise. If Barry ever asks you to be on the other side of a two-man power tool with him, just say no.
Barry doesn't have enough respect for power tools.
That's like a hot knife through soft butter.
Which is another way of saying he doesn't have enough respect for himself.
Power tool against the limb. let's do some damage.
If Barry lived alone as a hermit, his bad handiwork wouldn't be anyone's business. But Barry has a family who need him to stop using his chainsaw indoors.
Barry tried to take down his carport because it was rotting, so he decided the wall to take down first would be the supporting wall, with he and his son Zale inside. They barely managed to escape with their lives.
Sadly, that's not Barry's most shocking safety violation.
I was sitting in a pool of water trying to fix my dryer with it plugged in, and the 220 just blew my hands back and my head back, and I crumpled down and started crying, and that's probably what's wrong with me.
When Barry got to rehab, he added to his life list of safety violations right away by kicking over a paint can and not bothering to clean it up. Then he hit his head and installed a ceiling patch without using any screws or shims to secure it in place.
Done. And that's not safe. There's a real safety issue with your workmanship.
Barry believes when he bypasses standard techniques, he's being creative.
So creative but not technical.
No, that's right.
Our psychologist wanted Barry to seriously address his safety issues, but Barry just wanted to kid around.
Yeah, take it.
What do you think about Barry?
He doesn't really have a good perception of the cause and effect relationships. So that's different than being able to use a saw. It's being able to use the saw and see where that's going to go in the future, what the results of that are going to be.
Translation, the doctor is worried Barry might saw his leg off. Barry's a hard person to understand. He often teaches in elementary school classrooms, but as a student, he talks back in class.
Sounds complicated your way.
Yeah. He never takes notes.
Well, I don't remember all the stuff he told us about that.
Because?
Because I wasn't listening. I was laughing.
At who?
Everybody.
And he refuses to follow orders.
Just do it the way you're told to do it.
Are too high.
On day 2 of his stay in handyman rehab, Barry nearly threw his back out. Then we told him that only 2 people at a time could be on the roof of our tiny shed.
If you're telling me this roof isn't safe, we didn't build it, so it's got to be safe. When we say 2 on a roof, we mean 2 on a roof.
I've seen 3 guys on my neighbor's roof. 4 guys.
Okay, I'm going to say it again, Barry. When we say 2 on a roof, we mean 2 on a roof.
All right.
On day 3 of rehab, Barry continued his unsafe behavior by intentionally smashing his toilet. On day 4, he smashed without safety glasses.
Oh, yeah.
On day 5, he smashed his real glasses.
Later panels very quickly, very carefully.
On day 6, he was hurt by his drill.
Don't be scared. Don't be scared.
On day 7, he cut a knuckle. And on day 8, he laid waste to his sink. When Barry wasn't being unsafe, he was being an intentional nuisance.
I'll be asking what to do all the time. Daryl, what should I do now?
When Daryl led the yard work challenge, Barry pestered him relentlessly.
Am I doing this right, Daryl? Daryl, how far out are we going? Right about there? So I just have a question.
Sure enough, Daryl stressed out, making this uneven walkway.
Kind of have the wave effect. It kind of goes like this.
When our head builder also noticed it was wavy, Barry became defensive, then aggressive.
Anything positive, by the way, the last little question?
Sorry, guys. I was really hoping for something better than this.
I'm not
really
talking
was.
about the finished product. I'm talking about the overall.
Wobbly, wiggly.
Are you listening?
My job here as the building expert is to critique the building.
Right.
It's not all the gushy feelings between you. It's the building.
That altercation made Greg think Barry might be a lost cause.
He has his way. He wants to keep it doing it his way. He didn't come here with a willingness to change a little bit and to become a better handyman or a better craftsman. He wants to continue to do it his way, and I think we're going to continue to butt heads.
But Greg didn't give up on Barry. On day 9, he explained to him the proper technique for using this power auger is going extremely slowly. As usual, Barry didn't heed the safety warning. On day 10, Barry began taking out a light fixture without checking the electrical breaker first.
I'm sure electricity has been turned off. Yeah. Let's move on.
And in the final exam, Barry chose a project that wreaked havoc on his back, but he stayed at it for 8 hours straight without getting anyone to substitute. That is unhealthy. Barry isn't Canada's worst handyman, but he may be the most dangerous.
Oh, Barry. I always thought he sort of had it together, and he always seemed so calm and cool, but I think there's just a few sort of knives missing from the drawer, you know?
He's a walking disaster.
The rehab center is 20 minutes from demolition. When we come back, we'll be examining Daryl's biggest problem. Welcome back to this special edition of Canada's Worst Handyman, where in about 20 minutes, the Handyman Rehabilitation Centre behind me will be knocked to the ground. You know, for about 2 weeks, the country's 5 worst home renovators were inside here, learning the fundamentals of electrical work, of plumbing, of carpentry, and of humility. For Daryl, the guy who was ultimately named the second worst handyman in Canada, humility is a way of life.
Daryl! It's on the floor now. Daryl, you're killing it. Daryl, it's blobbing again. Daryl, stop.
When our camera crew traveled to Warkworth, Ontario to meet Daryl and his wife Sarah in their delightful new home, they thought they must have caught the couple on a bad day because Sarah berated Daryl while he made a toolbox.
I actually thought for just a moment that you could actually put together a box.
She insulted him while he tiled their backsplash.
I've never done this before, but I know more than you.
And she mocked him as he hung a mirror.
If you only read instructions once in your life, please let it be now.
Well, these are very hard instructions to read.
They're pictures.
But when the happy couple got to the rehab center, the abuse continued.
You are a complete idiot. That looks really If you make me bend down one more time, I'm gonna freak out.
This clearly isn't healthy. So, on day 2 of Handyman Rehab, we called in the psychologist. When Sarah had her session, she denied there was any problem.
If you asked Daryl, he'd probably say that I'm explosive. I can't take it anymore, all right? One thing at a time. But I like to think of it as passionate.
She did admit to demeaning her husband on a regular basis. But to Sarah, that's not a problem.
Oh, well, it's fun.
For who?
Well, Well, I think he thinks it's fun. You're an idiot. You know, every time you get stressed, you're such an ass. You're full of crap.
When Daryl took his turn on the couch, he also denied there was a problem.
Again, my comfort, my blanket or whatever, Sarah was right there protecting me at the end. And
What now?
I put this board on backwards.
Daryl might not see an issue, but Dr. Julie does.
He may be coming to this sort of crisis about his identity.
I'm no expert, but it smells to me like he's been told he's a failure for a long time, and I worry that he might believe it.
I'm concerned about Daryl as well. I see a man who is having a self-esteem crisis right now.
What is underneath this floor? You didn't sweep properly.
Any working handyman will tell you, the mood you're in can have a huge effect on your output. Pressure doesn't help.
Okay, come on, let's move, let's move.
Negativity doesn't help.
I don't know how you managed to find the door in the morning. Wait!
No kind of bad blood helps.
These things have to be screwed in. Can you just wait a second? Mine is not, and you're hurting my fingers. Give me a minute. This is why I don't like doing it with you. Because you just start ramming everything.
Is he Canada's worst handyman?
I believe he is.
With his loving wife by his side,
You're not actually going to turn it on, are you?
Well, it has to be tested.
Daryl failed the vast majority of his first 15 challenges.
A slot screwdriver.
So to see if Sarah was part of the problem, we sent her away and brought in David.
Surprise! I'm your new wife. Sarah's world is crashing down.
The challenge, replacing a kitchen counter and plumbing a new sink, was the toughest Daryl had faced. But with David, mistakes were fun. Instructions were calmly followed, and encouragement flowed freely.
Wicked! Give her hell, Daryl, give her hell. Holy cow, look at that!
Without Sarah, Daryl did the job perfectly and faster than anyone else in rehab. But running water isn't conclusive evidence to this couple. When they returned to the psychologist, Daryl defended his wife's right to belittle him.
To me, it's normal. One of the things I was worried about was Sarah not talking the same way to me that she normally does. You know, I wouldn't want to change.
We're okay. Push on the drill.
Daryl's greatest failure as a renovator is not addressing his biggest issue, Sarah.
You need help.
If Daryl kicked his wife out of the room when he's doing handiwork, it would probably cause a fight.
Don't piss me off.
But it would mean projects could get finished in piece instead of in pieces.
Now this piece still has to be cut to fit in here. What are you going to do about that now? Honestly, I don't know how much more I can take.
I kind of feel badly for the guy.
Sarah, I know a lot of Sarahs. Like, she's basically a gay man trapped in a woman's body.
I have no idea what that has to do with anything. But I can tell you this. Ultimately, there is no one to blame but Daryl himself for his torn vinyl flooring, his useless shelf, his grubby paint job, his leaning tower of glass blocks.
Boy, that really sucks.
His wallpaper fiasco, his crooked cupboards, his door jamb headache, and his incredible falling bed.
Easy.
To succeed as a renovator when he gets home, it is crucial for Daryl to start working alone.
Daryl, I wish you all the best.
When we come back, we'll see if Jeannie got the point.
Look!
Then, the Handyman Rehabilitation Center will be torn to smithereens. Only one of the nominees for Canada's Worst Handyman was a woman. Jeannie McCullough asked more questions than anyone else at rehab, which, you know, is great, except Jeannie rarely stopped asking questions long enough to hear the answer, which made us ask the philosophical query, if a handyman asks a question, but then doesn't wait long enough to hear the answer, was there ever really a question at all?
Just one question. Oh, you had to sand it first? Don't you need a ladder? What is that one, the last one that you use? Has anybody seen a stir stick? Merle, is there a smaller paintbrush? Have you got any white? Excuse me, I did have a question at the very beginning. What is this for? What is that attached to? Can we get coffee ordered?
Yes.
Jeannie just goes on and on and on.
That's gonna get real tired real quick.
One reason for Jeannie's confusion is she's a self-taught handyman. Everything she knows she learned through trial and error.
Now this is now 24 inches, so hopefully this will be the middle.
At her new home in Victoria, BC, Jeannie is certainly not afraid to try. On the day we met her, Jeannie drilled a peephole into her $800 door.
Yeah, I can see you.
She altered an existing windbreak.
Oh, I can't stand the sound myself.
And she showed off her self-installed switch plate.
I was getting a switch plate to cover this whole area, and it didn't quite reach.
The blinds Jeannie had made to her exact measurements didn't quite reach either.
It's too narrow. We can't take it back because this is custom made.
While trying to install those blinds, it became apparent that Jeannie has a hard time following instructions.
2 mounting brackets, which are not drawn correctly.
Why do they make it so complicated?
When she came to rehab, we knew we had to give Jeannie plenty of instructions, and we started with the basics. To cut a soft pine board, our building expert told Jeannie to use her cross-cut saw. Jeannie found that saw unwieldy, so she cut the board with her miter saw until its top lip prevented her from going any further.
Yoink.
Then she used a coping saw, designed to create intricate slices in thin wood. When that didn't suit her liking, Jeannie tried a 4th saw.
Oh, I found a saw that I like.
That's a hacksaw for cutting metal, hey?
Oh, well. Yeah, sure is, Andrew.
It sure is.
Before coming to rehab, Jeannie had only known the pleasure of using a handsaw. So, before handing her a power saw, Greg gave her precise instructions on safety and technique.
Now, I'm going to cut along that line.
What are you lining up?
In the shed, Jeannie seemed to grasp the fundamentals of jigsaw cutting and blade changing.
And you always have the cutting edge out.
Right.
But in her apartment, Jeannie repeatedly put the blade in backwards.
My gosh.
When we supplied Jeannie with written directions, she wanted to follow them.
Let's read the thing.
I'll read
You do have to read it.
I'll read it.
But she often couldn't figure it out. Shingle wrappers have instructions for shingling many different kinds of roofs. This shed has a peaked roof, but for some reason, Jeannie blindly yelled out the instructions for...
Okay, shingles in a valley. Trim it off flush with chalk line.
Yes.
Cut off top corner of each end shingle at an angle.
That's not a valley. That's a peak. A peak is a peak, and a valley is a valley.
When Jeannie tiled her bathroom, we told her the instructions were printed on the adhesive container.
It doesn't tell you on there how to do it.
Using flat side of trowel, apply skim coat of adhesive. Apply additional adhesive with notched side of trowel at 45-degree angle, combing in one direction. That doesn't tell you how to do it?
Not really. Does it?
Yeah, it does.
Jeannie often took instructions too literally. We didn't realize that until Greg recommended she use her drill to install screws.
She's trying to put the screws directly into the drill.
She's got the screw right in the chuck.
Oh, Jeannie.
Oh, Jeannie.
Goodness.
As Jeannie went through the first week of challenges, our challenge was trying to find the best way to convey information to her.
No, not it's coming out of the screw head. There you go.
We explained the forward and reverse feature on her drill in detail.
This button here. Forward, reverse, okay?
Okay, let me have a look at that then.
But day after day, she screwed backwards and couldn't understand the problem.
What am I doing wrong?
During the second week of challenges, we asked Jeannie to hang a mirror that came with pictures for instructions. When Jeannie saw an image of pencils marking a wall through brackets, though, she thought it meant to hang the mirror using pencils as if they were nails.
I have to put a pencil in this hole. It's nuts. I don't have 4 pencils.
How was it?
We needed HB octagonal fine point pencils.
Grasping at straws, we thought perhaps offering no instructions might allow Jeannie to find her own path. So we told her to make a chair and offered her no advice on how to do it. That didn't work either.
You all made really nice things. Is this a true statement, Jeannie?
I can absolutely stand by my chair.
But I could absolutely not sit in her chair.
No, it's really comfortable. Did I sit in it wrong?
Yes, see, it's folded now.
Jeannie desperately needs help, but she doesn't like letting people help her.
I found this, so I can do this. I can do those. I can do those. I can.
Lawrence, Jeannie's nominator, was an excellent helper when we paired him with Keith.
Lawrence, you're so fast at this.
And he was a workhorse when we paired him with Merle. But during most of his challenges with Jeannie, she shunned him.
Lawrence wasn't any help much, really.
When Lawrence did try to help, Jeannie would cast him away.
Lawrence, let me do this. Sorry. No, that's not right. This is not right.
Jeannie, she likes to do it her way, so I used to just keep quiet.
As the clock ticked and Jeannie got closer to failing each challenge, she would realize what an asset Lawrence is.
No, come on.
All right, don't stop yelling at me.
Then she'd usually snap at him to work even faster.
Come on, knock the damn thing, for God's sakes. Hit it, Lawrence.
Of course, not knowing how to wisely use her assistant goes back to Jeannie's original problem. She has difficulty comprehending instructions. In the final exam, Jeannie didn't read any instructions. That meant she didn't use enough glue to lay her living room floor. And in the kitchen, it meant she made a huge mess instead of tiling the floor.
If we do more...
Jeannie wasn't named Canada's worst handyman, but she was just a sliver away from earning the title.
Voila!
There's gonna be a gap in your floor now. Look, this is good.
Jeannie, good luck with your home in Victoria. And the next time you buy a hammer, look for one with instructions. After the break, it's the moment we've all been waiting for.
This one's for Keith Cole.
These apartments will finally be finished.
Welcome back to this special episode of Canada's Worst Handyman. In just a few moments, all of the hard work that's gone into the Handyman Rehabilitation Centre will be smashed to pieces.
After they spent 10 days in rehab, we put the nominees for Canada's Worst Handyman through a pentathlon of challenges to see who had learned fundamental skills and who hadn't. After that, it was time for the final exam, a 10-hour project involving 11 individual tasks. When the quitting bell rang, Daryl and Keith were sent to the roof to find out which one would be named Canada's Worst Handyman. It's now my duty to inform you that Canada's Worst Handyman is... That was 2 months ago. Now, it's time to put the Handyman Rehabilitation Centre out of its misery.
This one's for all the handymen everywhere. Where up in here? Yeah.
We all came here to learn something. Hopefully everybody learned something.
I actually do feel as though I've, sort of stumbled ahead from where I was, certainly. I mean, I'm not a master of anything, but I have certainly come a long way.
This one's for Keith Cole.
The most important thing to me is that I did learn things.
I worked neatly, efficiently, did my best, worked hard, and so they can't fault me for that.
Take that building.
There's bad, handy people everywhere, and they want to learn, and hopefully they find the support from their loved ones, and can learn, to better themselves.
No, I'm not going to do anything handy for a while.
It's not as though I'm going into the business with a shingle out my door saying that I'm a home repair service. Not yet, anyway. Not this week. Maybe next year.
I learned lots, and I'm gonna take that back home with me.
I can't believe I'm Canada's worst handyman. I'm still not convinced. I think there should be a do-over.
There is no need for a do-over. Keith Cole is Canada's worst handyman. But Keith, you know, if it makes you feel any better, all the evidence has been destroyed.